Any day now.
Sister driven noise, yeah, the mess we make. Machine Pun Kelly get caught in the fray. Facts and logic with a twist of jest. Strip it down to truth, yeah, forget the rest. Humor blows the lies right out of the park. Look beyond the shadows that set the dark. Sparks of laughter fire up the night, bringing clarity when they blur the fight. Cut through the chaos, yeah, the tangled lies. Fun Kelly with the sand clear eyes. Truths and jokes gonna rock this show. Step into light where the real facts glow. Step into
Hello and welcome to the Pun Show. As you can see, I have a guest here today, and this is Tony Andrews. He is. I was asking Kitty, who is the person who put together the Epstein files, so I was asking her about some things to do with the Epstein files, and she said, "You know who you really need to talk to is you need to talk to Tony." So she connected me. She said that you know more than anybody about the whole thing. And like, I think a lot of people are probably like me, like they know who Epstein is, and they kind of, get grossed out when they hear the name. But there's a lot more, I don't know what to call it. There's a lot more there's a lot more
meat to the story
about Epstein reality. Like there's a lot of BS about it. Like there's a lot of conspiracy nonsense, but there's also a lot of actual conspiracy. And so every time I start trying to get into it and trying to sift out the nonsense from the reality, it's just like it's not. You're just going down a rabbit hole. You're like going down a whole entire rabbit village or something, And so I was hoping what you could do is help us walk through how did he get, like, wasn't he a teacher at one point?
Well, yeah, I mean, it depends on where you kind of want to start. There's a number of things, when it comes to Epstein and understanding how to digest all of the information we're getting. I think you're absolutely right. There's just so much information coming out. A lot of it is coming out in a way, even intentionally, to try to distract us from the reality of the files. And because of everybody's attention span being so short these days, because of social media and everything else we're doing and multitasking with, it's really hard for people to paint a clear picture and understand what the most important aspects of this whole thing is. And obviously the human trafficking, the sexual abuse of children, the possible even worse actions towards children, including death and even the possibility of cannibalism, as we're seeing in some of these emails. It seems very sensational, and it does make people want to turn away because it's very hard for people to absorb that information. But I think the most important thing is understanding the full operation of what Epstein was truly up to. All we've ever really heard about or known about was his, involvement with young girls, the island, all of the sensational things revolving around his abuse and everything that he did in Ghislaine. I think fortunately, I think these files are helping us understand the larger scheme of things, which I'll kind of give you an idea of where, from my research, what I found in terms of kind of the genesis of Epstein himself, kind of starts in the mid 70s, I'd say. Yeah, and this whole process, this whole operation, this whole program, whatever you want to call it, probably goes back easily 100 years. What I found is, when you go back and you look at the intelligence apparatus that we had, over the last 100 years, which involved the OSS, which became the CIA, and everything else, there was a lot that was happening over the last 100 years, which kind of revolved around starting with prohibition and the Italian mafia and the Jewish mafia being involved in a lot of things surrounding that. And as we transgress into, World War II and beyond, things started to evolving in terms of this cooperation between intelligence and transnational organized crime. And I think that's kind of the key for people to understand at the largest level is the Epstein operation at its full force was a sanctioned transnational operation that was funded from laundering money all over the world. But that was, when I say sanctioned, it was actually multiple countries involved in this, allowing Epstein to do these things in a way where he didn't get held accountable. And it reflects.
And, 2 years ago, people would have said you were crazy for saying that. They would have said you're just a wacko conspiracy theorist. But now you've got former prime ministers of countries being arrested, British royalty being arrested. Like, there's actual, substance to that. That you're not just some wackadoodle conspiracy guy.
Well, exactly. Well, although they still want to paint us as that, because especially on the right side of things, on the right wing side of things, they're going to do everything to obfuscate, deflect, lie, anything to turn us away from the reality of these files.
The same people that says that Joe Biden had COVID created so he could win the election.
Oh, yeah.
Those are the people that now call you a conspiracy theorist because.
Exactly. Well, and the funny thing is the insanity of the amount of projection that we're now putting together over the years. I mean, when you look at Pizzagate, when you look at a lot of the stuff that they were accusing in 2016, whether it be Hillary or the Democratic Party or other people of doing, these emails and all of this communication we're seeing, these official FBI reports, all these various things are painting a pretty clear picture of an operation that was happening for decades. That exactly was those types of things. I mean, I don't want to get into the nitty-gritty details of things that we can, go back and forth about as far as, the abuse and the murders and all of stuff. I think everybody has seen a lot of that stuff. But, when we go back in terms of Epstein and where he was, a lot of people don't realize that when he graduated high school at 16 years old in the 60s, okay? So he graduated high school 2 years before most people do. And he was somewhat of a math whiz, so to say. But, I think he's somebody who, in my opinion, probably was one of those very highly intelligent people that had a lot of ADD type issues. I think he just had a lot of stuff going on in his brain, and it just kind of took him in multiple directions. What I, based off of my research, believe is that from high school up until about 1974, when he started working for Dalton School, the all-girls school, that the headmaster when he was hired was Donald Barr. Donald Barr is Bill Barr, the former attorney general for both President Trump and President H.W. Bush. He was the headmaster when Epstein was hired. And during that time, before that, Epstein had gone to a couple different colleges and universities, but he never graduated. So here he was, an unqualified person who was hired out of the blue to be a teacher at a girls' school.
He was Bill Barr's dad, or he was
Bill Barr's dad. Is Donald Barr. Yep. And Donald Barr was part of the OSS prior to him being the headmaster at the school. So he was an intelligence asset at some point. And once an asset, always an asset, as far as I'm concerned. I believe, not to jump ahead or too far into a different direction. This is one of the reasons Donald Trump has gotten away with things for decades. Is I believe he was an informant, an asset of sorts that was at the higher level of things, that was able to give them information, whether it be on foreign oligarchs that were living in his buildings, or like Russians, or whether it be his mob associates building his hotels.
The next thing you're going to tell me is Donald Trump is the deep state.
I don't want to say that because deep state is actually the phrase they came up with. What I'm going to say is Donald Trump has been a crook his whole life. I mean, it's evidenced through decades of documented, verifiable information that that I don't have to make anything up about it. It's just true. He was money. He was, got fined for laundering money at Taj Mahal. Millions of dollars. I mean, they all want to ignore this, but this is fact. So when we go back to 1974, when Epstein was teaching at Dalton School, he was there for 2 years. During that time, it's documented that he would show up at the young people's parties. He was that teacher that kind of wanted to hang around with all the kids. And ultimately, it started to become a problem with some of the younger girls. And
you went to the junior high parties instead of the high school parties, huh?
Exactly. And one of the kids at Dalton that he taught, her father was Bear, Mr. Bear from Bear Stearns. And that's how he was introduced to Bear Stearns. So in 1976, he left the Dalton School to start working at Bear Stearns, again, as a stockbroker, but he was an unqualified stockbroker. So here they hired him at Bear Stearns as an unqualified stockbroker in 1976. Also in 1976, this is where it starts to kind of come together. As we know, those of us that are of the age, we know I was young at the time, but that was during Watergate, the peak of Watergate, and the CIA had a tremendous amount of pressure on them and an eyeglass on them. Nobody was able to really conduct operations that they were usually able to conduct, the covert operations and whatnot, because of the spotlight due to Watergate. So what happened is Adnan Khashoggi, who most people are familiar with, he's Jamal Khashoggi's uncle. Adnan Khashoggi created what was called the Safari Club, and he financed it initially. It was a club that actually had a number of different nations in it, primarily from the Middle East, Syria, Egypt, Saudi Arabia, and
I think we just called that the Board of Peace now.
Yeah, exactly. And a handful of others. The United States and Israel were part of it, but unofficial partners in it. The Safari Club was created to allow this covert operation to continue that the CIA couldn't do. So these nations kind of came together and created the Safari Club for covert blackmail operations, weapons trafficking, as well as money laundering. And at the same time, in 1976, when the Safari Club was created, the CIA director at the time sanctioned the bank called BCCI. I'd have to look it up. I don't know what it stands for. I knew it the other day. BCCI was sanctioned by the then CIA director to launder money to allow for the Safari Club to maintain their operational goals and have the funding to do so. Now, the then found
George Bush, like George H.W. Bush.
That was George H.W. Bush.
That's the CIA at the time, or close to it, right? Like,
yeah, he was in charge of the CIA for a year. That happened to be the year that this happened, and he sanctioned this organization or this bank to launder money for this organization. So as we fast forward to 1981, Epstein had to leave Bear Stearns because he was conducting illegal stock trades. He was just quietly pushed out the door. He still maintained a real solid relationship with all of Bear Stearns, but he started his own financial company where he only had billionaires as his clients. And one of his first clients was Adnan Khashoggi. And this is during the 80s. During this time, Khashoggi, while Epstein was managing his finances, Khashoggi was handling the weapons sales and transfers, the illegal weapons sales and transfers for the Iran-Contra affair. So here,
Bush was involved in, right?
Yep. So again, Epstein smack dab in the middle of this. Around the same time, this is when he was starting to get involved in other things in finance and connecting with high power, high profile people. One of those was Lex Wessner, as we know. and he became the financial manager for Les Wexner as well. Now, my pure speculation here is I also believe that's when he became the financial manager for Donald Trump. Now, the one thing about Donald Trump, though, is, and if you want to know how Donald Trump does his business, and who knows Donald Trump's business than anybody else, read Epstein's emails. Epstein knew how much of a crook Donald Trump is, and he actually lays out in detail how he managed his business pretending to be a billionaire when he never was a billionaire. So as we progress through this in the mid 80s, and he gets hooked up with Les Wexner, Wexner had limited brands. By 1989, 1991, 89, the wall came down in Berlin. 91.
I was in Germany when that happened, by the way, Tony.
Oh, really? Wow, that's awesome.
That was quite an emotion. I was in a restaurant with a bunch of Germans when find in restaurants in Germany, and they were watching, and I was like watching old men just bawl their eyes out.
Oh wow, that had to be quite the experience. That's for sure. I mean, it just happened. It happened kind of randomly, right?
Right,
just
right.
Just take it down.
I was just there on TDY, and I was just sitting there eating, and then it's like, what the hell is going on, And they were just shocked, and it was pretty emotional experience.
I can imagine. That's awesome to have been a part of that. So, so in '91, when the Soviet Union collapsed, by the time this had happened, we had. Also, we had the Safari Club, and the usefulness of the Safari Club was starting to wane in terms of how the operation was set up. And this is when it transitioned into what's called Mega Group. Now, you can look all of this up online. I've looked it up myself. It's all very easy to verify. Mega Group is also called Jewish Study Group, and it was an organization that was connected to Mossad and the IDF in Israel that was basically in charge of doing all those same things: blackmail operations, weapons transfers, money laundering. So now we have a Mega Group in the fold, and Mega Group consisted of Ghislaine Maxwell's father, Robert Maxwell, Les Wexner, also Steven Spielberg, and a number of other high-profile Jewish leaders. Now, Mega Group, then, as the 90s progressed, Ghislaine's father mysteriously died off of his yacht a week after he was outed as likely a triple agent, a KGB, MI5, and Mossad agent. And a week later, he mysteriously died off of his yacht. And this is when Epstein essentially takes over Mega Group. Now, at this point, it starts to evolve because the fall of the Soviet Union presented a ton of opportunities. And this is where Epstein becomes pretty close with Putin. As we see in the emails, Epstein did write in an email, I forget what year it was, but specifically that he was Putin's wealth manager. So here we have Jeffrey Epstein is Putin's wealth manager going back likely to the 90s, okay? So with all of this folded in and, this trafficking happening, this is when, in the mid 80s, you've got John Casablancas, who created elite models in Europe. That was one of the higher end modeling agencies. I've discovered that, Paulo Zampoli, obviously, he's the man who brought Melania to the United States in 1996 and helped her procure her Einstein visa, which obviously has a lot of questions behind it. Zampoli was actually 18 in 1987. His father died, and his John Casablancas, who he was close to, talked Zampoli into selling his father's very successful toy company in Italy to none other than Silvio Berlusconi, who is the former prime minister of Italy, who's also had problems with abuse of women, and Casablancas had talked Zampoli into starting his own modeling gig, which he did, ID Models. So during this time frame, Casablancas was working with Epstein. I have found information that shows that they were also working with Flavio Briatore, who is prominent in having dated Heidi Klum. He also dated Naomi Campbell, who was also Ghislaine's one of her best friends, and also Joseph Mifsud, which a lot of people are shocked with, because Joseph Massoud is related to George Papadopoulos and Russia and everything that happens surrounding them. And a lot of people don't realize that Massoud, in a lot of documents that you can find, is essentially a known Russian agent. So all of this stuff, and I follow George Papadopoulos on Twitter. I don't follow him. I just look and see what he says every once in a while. He spews these lies about being set up by, whoever, and George Papadopoulos and everything else. But the reality is George's wife worked with Mifsud years before George met Mifsud, and all that went down. Additionally, Simona, his wife, has been suspected of being a Russian spy for a number of years. And now that we're in 2026 and all hell has broken loose with them embracing Russia, both Simona and George work for Russia Today, the RT news station. So all the people that were screaming hoax back in 2016 are now embracing Russia, Russian jobs, Russian narratives. So when we get back to Epstein and his kind of involvement in all of this in the mid 90s, that's when Epstein and Zampoli, it said that Zampoli had the party at the Kit Kat Club. That's when Melania met Trump. That's the official story. It's in her biography. There's definitely other information, including emails that show that's likely a lie, that Trump met her prior to that particular trip.
Well, some people will use the biography to debunk the emails.
Yes.
But it's really the emails show that the biography is the lie.
Well, and I think that's key to understand, helping people understand, is there's a lot of information out there that we rely on, especially with AI. They rely on it to be factual information when in fact it's actually a lie to begin with. That being a great example. So if you go and, somebody that's going to try to debunk you or argue with you like a troll online, saying, well, that's not true, they're going to cite, Melania's biography, or they'll even ask Grok, for example, on X to confirm this, and then Grok will tell the lie because that's what they're finding online. And that's the thing for people to understand about this information is, one, Grok is, and any AI is not a reliable source for facts, because they really aren't basing it off of reality and human consciousness and our ability to actually digest information. And AI will never be able to do that. But additionally, some of those fact-checking sites and Grok itself intentionally are telling lies. I've proven myself on Twitter that Grok has lies or doesn't give proper information. And that was on one particular subject at 3 different times over a 6-month period when I've asked a question about one particular subject. Also, Snopes is obviously a go-to for a lot of people. I'll give you an example of Snopes not being reliable as well. In March of 24, there's a memo that was circulated. I have a copy of it, and it was from Roger Stone to Donald Trump, basically explaining how once Donald Trump wins the presidency, Roger Stone will put together a plan to get rid of guns from Trump's opponents, people that don't like him. And everybody was yelling at me online about it, about debunking, like, oh, that's not true, blah, blah, blah. Snopes says it's not true. And there's also 2 other sites that say it's not true. But the reality is the only person to debunk that story on any of those sites is Roger Stone himself. And they literally just cite his denials on Twitter for having wrote that.
Roger Stone is a man of tremendous integrity, as we all know.
If we live in bizarro world, yes. Don't get me started on Roger. But so getting back to, of course, Epstein and his operation, it's much more than just, the child trafficking, the abuse. It's horrendous, and we can't look away, and we can't allow people to look away. We need people to understand these are things that actually happened. These are things that happen to children. This is a line that needs to be drawn in the sand. There's no acceptable excuse for supporting anybody that has done anything like that. I don't care about what their quote unquote policies are or anything else bullshit excuse my language, that they're telling you that they want you to believe, but pedophilia should be the line for everybody. And if it's not, then you're on the wrong side of history, period. And the key players that we need to keep in mind when it comes to Epstein, there's some things that with all this information that everybody needs to realize, there's some solid verifiable facts that everybody needs just to understand and put that into the perspective of everything we've been dealing with. The first one is
hang on. Look, on that one, let me pop something up here.
Sure.
I actually put together a slideshow that of people that this would be a great time to introduce this.
Mm-hmm.
These are the people that, I know you were just talking about the can't trust AI on everything.
Yeah.
But I've got some this is Claude put together a list of people that are in the orbit, and then people that have had accusations against him,
Mm-hmm.
and to check out more or less. So I was thinking I could go through, and then you could tell me a little bit about each of the people that are involved.
Sure, absolutely.
All right. So first of all, the very famous now Ghislaine Maxwell. She's the one person that's in prison. Of course, out of all of this stuff going on, if anybody's going to go to prison, it's got to be a woman, right?
Of course. So, Ghislaine Maxwell, obviously on the screen there, you've got a lot of great stuff that gives everybody some insight into what was going on with her. But, there is one email in there where it's not an email. I apologize. If you look at the birthday book that was put out for Epstein's 50th birthday,
the one where Donald Trump showed off his
drawing skills, yeah. If you look at the birthday book, there's one insert in there where I think it was the last name was Volk. The guy, I think he died a number of years ago, but he had put a letter in there. He was the financial guy that worked with Epstein, I think, at Bear Stearns, and he had mentioned in his note to Epstein that he had ran Robert Maxwell's finances, and he was the manager of Robert Maxwell's finances.
And Robert Maxwell was her dad.
Is her dad, yep.
And he was involved in intelligence, right?
Yeah, Mossad, KGB, and MI5 likely, all three together, And you can find plenty of pictures that show him with King Charles, him when King Charles was young. You can see him with the Lady Di. I mean, they were deeply in this circle of the British monarchy, along with, the fact that when Robert died, he got basically a state send-off in Israel. And, Robert Maxwell, I don't want to go too much into it, but he was involved in the stealing of promised software, which was intelligence software, and the implanting of a bug, and then the selling of that software all over the world to be able to spy on organizations and nations. One of he had sold that software to Sandia National Laboratories, as well as the Lawrence Livermore Laboratories, way back when they had procured that, and basically allowed Israel to be able to spy on our nuclear programs. Now, Maxwell is also very heavily involved in how Israel actually procured nuclear intelligence, as well as the nuclear materials out of Pennsylvania that went missing. About 400, I think it was 400 kilograms of nuclear enriched uranium was stolen out of Pennsylvania back in the 60s that ended up in Israel.
Wow.
So he was key. Yeah, he was key to Israel procuring nuclear weapons, and a lot of people don't understand that. But that's also something key about what's going on right now. Again, I can go off onto a million tangents. I don't want to, but a lot of people don't realize that 10 minutes after Trump was sworn in 2017 to the presidency, literally 10 minutes later, while Mike Flynn was still sitting in the stands as all these, was the inauguration, everything was going on, he was texting Russians telling them that the nuclear deal for the Saudis was a go. Now, this is something that, again, it's been looked at a little bit, but nothing as much as it should. And when we look at what Jared was doing, when we look at a number of other things that we have, I have no doubt whatsoever that Trump was active in helping, MBS procure nuclear weapons. But I digress. That's not what this subject is about, but that is something I've written extensively about as well. So Ghislaine Maxwell and her father obviously had ties to intelligence. Epstein was brought into the fold. Ghislaine became his secretary, his assistant, his lover. She is said to have been in the 90s. It's rumored, and a pretty solid rumor, that her and Ivana Trump, Donald Trump's first wife, would drive around town finding young girls, high school girls, for Jeffrey too. So, not only do we have Melania involved, but we had Ivana pretty solidly involved in this too. And I have pictures I posted on a couple threads showing Ivana Trump with Naomi Campbell and with Vladislav Doronin. There's a picture of her even with Diddy, which brings everything full circle in this whole sexual abuse scandal that we're dealing with. So there's a lot of incestuous relationships going on among these high profile celebrity people that all comes back to this one thing and this connection to Epstein. So with Ghislaine, she's key. Obviously, I just posted it again today. There's an email between Ghislaine and Melania back in 2002, prior to her marriage to Trump. But they literally were talking like they were best friends and signing off with love, and they had nicknames for each other. So that's not just a casual relationship that Melania was having with Ghislaine. This was some serious stuff. The naysayers, the cult members will say otherwise, but the fact that Ghislaine is sitting in Club Fed right now with very little oversight of what she's doing, and Trump wants to pardon her, should speak volumes to this cover-up as well.
And Ghislaine was like the chief recruiter?
Yep, chief recruiter. I think they had a falling out. I think you can kind of tell it by their emails that they kind of separated ways a little bit, probably in the early 2010s to mid 2010s. I think, she probably aged out of his system, maybe, I don't know. And, he had other assistants that were taking care of things. This operation was, a 24/7 operation where they were procuring girls for these high profile people at Epstein properties all over the United States at all times.
So let's go on the next. Leslie Groff. I had never heard of Leslie Groff until I found out that her name is like one of the most mentioned names or actually, I think she's the most mentioned person other than Jeffrey Epstein in the Epstein files.
Well, yeah, and Leslie Groff was his assistant. I mean, if anything, she's the one that knows everything. And when you look at emails, there's tons of emails between Leslie and Jeffrey. It's clear she was completely in the know about everything Jeffrey Epstein did. There's no question about that. You can see that there's certain words and statements they use that are kind of talk arounds in terms of the nefarious activities that were going on. But for the most part, she was pretty straightforward about things that were going on and what Epstein was doing. She was procuring, a lot of people saw a few weeks ago that, Epstein was supposed to go to a Angelina Jolie premiere. And then there's another email where somebody told Epstein that Brad Pitt was disappointed that he didn't show up at that premiere. It's insane that so many high profile people were so connected to Jeffrey Epstein, and not just because they knew some people that knew him. When you've got Brad Pitt disappointed that Epstein didn't show up at Angelina's premiere back when they were together, that should speak volumes to how welcomed Epstein was into this world, and they all knew. But Leslie, she's the one that knows more than anybody. I have no idea why she isn't sitting in front of Congress right now or on the stand somewhere, because she is an accomplice. But she was also, I believe, one of the people that was part of NDA, or not his non-prosecution agreements, where they basically allowed his assistants to go off scot-free.
And that's something I was going to ask. They're subpoenaing Hillary Clinton? Why aren't they subpoenaing Leslie Goff? I mean,
well, I mean, I think we all know why. I mean, this is no longer politics, but they want to continue to play a politic game. I mean, Hillary and Bill are more than willing to come forward and discuss what they know about Epstein. I'm a full believer, just like pretty much anybody else on the other side of the aisle, that if either of them are shown to have committed crimes and abusing, children and adults, they should be held to full accountability, just like anybody else. We know the other side doesn't feel that way. It's everybody except Trump for them. So, I think, and my whole thing with Bill and Hillary is, and I wrote a short thread about it last week, is, Bill should just come out and tell everybody exactly what Epstein was up to, talk about the things that I talked about, because it's all verifiable. And if we have somebody like the president coming out saying, this is the operation, this is why so many people were close to him, he was laundering money for people, he was doing this for businesses, it's known that for the St. Petersburg Economic Forum in 2014, he was hired or asked to not only procure high-profile businessmen and political leaders to come to the forum, but also to bring women to set them up for blackmail situations, because that's what Epstein does. So, he was welcomed into the world to be able to continue to do this. But what we're seeing is practically everybody, even our highest level people, have had a thumb on them. I hate to say, but, Biden failed us. I mean, there's, by handing the keys over with a smile, knowing what he likely knew that we now know some of, but not all of, he failed his oath to the Americans, to America and the Constitution, to protect us, because we wouldn't be in this situation.
So, yeah, I agree with you. I've said it many, many times on this show. Anybody that is complicit, anybody that abused these children, and anybody that was complicit or enabled that, they should all be held to the fullest extent of the law. This is the single largest sex trafficking operation in the history of the known world,
Yep.
And anybody that participated belongs behind bars. I don't care if it's Bill Clinton. I don't care if it's Hillary Clinton. I don't care if it's Donald Trump. I don't care if it's Melania Trump. I don't care if it's Ivana Trump. I don't care if it's Donald Duck. Every single one of them should go to jail.
100%. There's no question about that. It's not even a point of contention for anybody to discuss. Everybody should go to jail, period.
So here's a guy that I had never heard of, but you probably have. I was just looking at names, and I was like, who's this Richard Kahn guy? Seems like an appropriate name, last name Kahn.
Yeah. Well, he had so many people surrounding him, and let's see, Deutsche Bank. I'm reading your stuff here. Deutsche Bank transaction flag suspicious through Kahn. So Deutsche Bank is truly key here too. I mean, we've known it long before we started talking about Epstein.
So Richard Kahn was just he was an accountant.
Yeah, he was an accountant that was just well aware of everything going on and handling things on the back end. He was just another co-conspirator, as far as I'm concerned, that was helping them conduct illegal operations, primarily through the finances. A lot of people.
You were just about to mention Deutsche Bank, which Deutsche Bank is also, if you think back to Donald Trump's trial, it got some fame there too. And I think Deutsche Bank also, there was some stuff with the whole the Russian interference.
Absolutely. I mean, Deutsche Bank is key to pretty much everything. A lot of people basically have alluded to the fact that Deutsche is basically a Russian operated bank, even though it's not in Russia. It has a lot of influence by Russia. If you remember way back when Lawrence O'Donnell did that one segment on Trump's loans through Deutsche Bank having been underwritten by Russia, he was made to retract his statements because it was single sourced. But I guarantee, in my mind, he was absolutely right. I mean, I don't think someone like Lawrence O'Donnell is going to go through that entire process of finding that information, even with just a single source, and put it out there on TV if there's not some meat behind it. So, and then we know that Deutsche, and this goes back to why I believe that Epstein was Trump's wealth manager, is because we know that there was $1 billion in transactions. We know this recently between Epstein and Deutsche and Trump through Deutsche Bank. So I don't have the full details on that, but there is information out there that can be found talking about that as well. So everything still comes full circle, and the key players, the key institutions keep coming back into focus in all of this. So I think this Richard Kahn was definitely very knowledgeable of things, helped it along. A lot of people don't also realize that prior to the Bernie Madoff Ponzi scheme, there was the Towers Financial Ponzi scheme, which was at the time the largest Ponzi scheme in U.S. history. And what people don't know is Jeffrey Epstein was front and center on that. He was basically the leader of that. And everybody that was involved in it went to jail except Jeffrey Epstein.
Well, it seems like a lot of the same players are overlapping different conspiracies. And at a certain point, it seems to be like a bit much for it to just be a coincidence.
Oh, yeah. And I've said for years, there's no coincidences in Trump world. I can give you 100 examples of that, but we don't have time today. But yeah, nothing's a coincidence. All of this comes full circle. I mean, the Russian money being involved, all of the stuff that was involved in the Russian interference. I mean, I've written extensively about it, threads on threads, and I've had communication with a lot of nefarious people that nobody's ever talked to that have basically confirmed to me, and I'm just a guy, on the internet, that have confirmed to me what their role was. One of those people is Maria Butina. I've actually spoke to her a handful of times on Twitter, and it's always their arrogance and their ego that gets the best of them, because she essentially tried to pretend she wasn't a spy, and I called her out on facts, and a number of other people. So anyway, getting back to Epstein, and here we have Darren Indike. You have on here another high-profile person
that guy does not look at all like a pedophile.
Yeah, yeah, not at all. Huh?
I mean, if I had kids and I was like in the grocery store with them, I would put them in the cart to make sure they were safe.
Exactly. Sorry. Let's see. So yeah, I mean, he was. We have a lot of key people now. Is he part of the current administration in any way, or what is he up to now, Darren Indike? Do we know?
I do not know. I can look it up.
In the inner circle, handled legal.
I guess he's just
another money guy, kind of
just being a lawyer somewhere.
Well, and it all comes back to follow the money. It's always been follow the money, and again, not the same subject, but something everybody needs to understand is when Robert Mueller investigated Trump and his ties to Russia, and when the Select Senate Intelligence Committee did so, they both were forbidden from following the money. They could not look into Trump's financials. That they were not allowed to.
Wow.
Which now we understand why, I'm sure. So
could be some connection there. Maybe
exactly.
something at Deutsche Bank.
Yeah, exactly. There's a reason why people didn't give American banks wouldn't loan Trump money 20 years ago. That in itself should have told everybody, why the hell are we voting for this guy? But
you'd think there could have been some signals.
Yeah, only $1 million.
Not to mention, did Epstein commit government-assisted suicide?
It's still up in the air. I don't think Epstein committed. Jeffrey
Yeah. Like did he like government assisted suicide? Like,
Yeah,
like
yeah.
that was one of my favorite tweets of all time was if you think you were surprised when Epstein committed suicide, imagine how he felt.
Yeah. Yeah, there's definitely a lot of questions about that. I just saw the thing yesterday about the prostate, and the body had a prostate, and apparently Epstein didn't.
That's kind of
Yeah, questionable for sure. And I don't want to jump onto conspiracies, but you see these pictures coming out of Israel. But now with AI, it's hard to understand anything. I have a really hard time believing that he just was killed, though, given his influence. I mean, Epstein almost had the influence of a president of a country worldwide without a country, if that makes sense.
but
I
that
mean,
would also, like if he's in jail, that would be a reason there's a target on his back. If he starts talking, he could bring down a whole lot of people.
Absolutely.
A whole lot of really powerful people.
Exactly.
Including somebody that was like in charge of the federal prisons.
Exactly. Yep. Well, no, and the entire nation has been infested with these Trump's sycophants and these cult members. It's going to take a lot for us to get out of this. I don't think people realize how deep we are into this and how difficult it is going to be to recover.
If we had a real attorney general,
yeah,
which we do not. But if we had a real attorney general, if there has ever been a need for a special prosecutor, this is the. There used to be like Kenneth Starr was appointed by Congress. But then, because of that whole thing, they did away with the rule that Congress could do something like that. We certainly we could use a Kenneth Starr situation right now. Of course,
exactly.
Not sackless, feckless.
Yeah.
Do that, but.
Well, and it's unfortunate, the more I look at things, the more disappointed I get because of the connections a lot of people have and knowing what we now know. I mean, the information we have about Jeffrey Epstein was known by the intelligence community for at least 30 years. So here we have, how many presidencies have we gone through, both Democratic and Republican, that either a blind eye was turned away from this or this was hidden in a way that no one was able to dig, Sarah Kellen, you have on the screen here, she was one of the assistants. She was one of the people that was covered by the agreement that he signed, that the non-prosecution agreement, so she could not be held accountable. I believe she actually was the one that was married in a same-sex marriage to one of Epstein's foreign girls, because he's known to have set them up, forced them into same-sex marriages for immigration purposes.
Oh.
And I think Sarah Kellen was married to, and I have it somewhere, but she was married to, I think it's Nadia Marchenko is who she was married to, who was one of Epstein's assistants also. Go ahead.
There you go. Next slide.
And
was that is that who you're talking about? Nadia?
Yep, Marchenkova. Yep. I think Sarah Kellen was married to Nadia Marchenkova, but what a lot of people don't realize is Kimball Musk dated Nadia Marchenkova. Elon's brother dated Nadia.
Oh.
So and a lot of it
together. I was like, wait, who's the? That's the one that spilled the beans on Epstein being an illegal immigrant.
He spilled the beans on Elon being an illegal immigrant. Yeah, exactly. So yep, his own brother on TV. They spilled the beans that they were in the country working illegally before they procured legal status. So he dated Nadia Marchenkova. So again, we come full circle into this incestuous group of people that have all been part of this for a very long time. When we look at these emails going back to the early 2010s, there are a lot of dinners, a lot of meetups, a lot of trips to the island from a lot of high-profile people, whether it be Gates, whether it be Elon. He tries to deny ever doing anything, but there's clear evidence that he's directly meeting with Epstein at various points, or even given him and his girls tours at SpaceX. I mean, there's so much verifiable information.
Whoops, looks like we just dropped him. So I don't know what just happened. Looks like we just lost Anthony. So we're just getting good too. So I don't know what to do. I think what I'm going to do is I'm going to go ahead and pull up the other deck. So anybody, you know, if you have any thoughts on any of this, go ahead and feel free to share them. Gary was here. I don't know if he's still. Oh, what do we got? I think Gary was thinking that we were going to try and say Bill was, if, like I said, Gary, if anybody at all is guilty, then they should be in jail. So I don't know if Anthony is going to try and come back or what's going on there. Let me just send him a message here. All right, so I'm just gonna take him off here, and I'm gonna go ahead. I'm just gonna change gears, and if he comes back, we'll pick up where we left off. So sorry about all the weirdness, but we just lost him. I also wanted to talk about the State of the Union. Oh, here we go. We're back. Hey there, Anthony. Welcome back.
I do apologize. I can't hear you at all.
You can't. Can you hear me now? Is it me or is it you? Hang on a second. Can you hear me? Try refreshing your browser. Like I can hear you.
Enter the studio.
There you go. Can you
Sorry
hear me?
about that. Yeah. I'm sorry
All right,
about
we're
that.
good. We're back in action. Let's rock and roll. So Adriana Ross.
So yeah, Adriana Ross was just another assistant who was part of the overall operation. I don't know how much you heard when I was talking about that, but it's clear that this was an operation that was going on basically 24/7 at all his properties. It just wasn't whenever he was at a property. I think these high-profile people, would basically say, "I'm going to be here, I'm going to be there. What do you have for me?" You're seeing it. You see a lot of it in the emails. They're very innocuous type emails, but you see a lot of things talking about, setting up a girl or having somebody for this person at this date, or so-and-so's coming to town to this particular, mansion or ranch. And so, he had this operation of women that in some cases he actually groomed from teenagehood up to assistanthood. They were originally victims.
Like Adriana, Nadia, and Sarah, they're all very pretty.
Yes.
And so I was going to ask, did they start off as being recruits that became assistants?
Well, Nadia is actually one of them that it's even discussed. He mentions it in an email to Michael Wolff, I believe, about how he purchased a girl when she was 15 years old from Slovakia, not Slovenia, but Slovakia. And Nadia is that girl. So it looks, from what I've seen outside of the emails prior to them being released, and then in some of the emails, she's the one that at 15 years old, Epstein bought from her family in Slovakia, brought her to the United States as a victim, and essentially trained her into being a helper, a recruiter, an assistant. And we see that a handful of times. They would train the girls how to clean up the rooms after they serviced the guests. They would train the girls to do a lot of the household duties to prepare for all of the things that were happening there. And knowing when you had people, they were telling people, you owe me 3 girls, I brought you this many girls. I mean, it was a constant ongoing operation. And then, he did pay a lot of money for a lot of them to go to school and do stuff like that. That doesn't make any of this right. But I found it interesting. There's a princess in Europe that he was financing her home and her food, and she was emailing him about it. And I thought it was interesting that why is he financing a princess? But when we started thinking about things, and I'm in the Epstein wiki group with Dr. Patsy, the Resistance Kitty, when we started thinking about things, another thing that it seems that they were doing is they were harvesting eggs from women for whatever their. Go ahead.
Wow.
Yeah, and some of the scientific stuff that they were doing behind the scenes is very much related to anti-aging experiments and stuff like that. So when you look at a lot of these scientists from Harvard or MIT or some of these other high-profile schools that were involved with Epstein, that were getting grants from Epstein and whatnot, a lot of their work revolved around anti-aging, stem cells, and a bunch of different stuff similar to that. So, we start to paint a larger picture here, and it makes you wonder. I mean, I saw Leslie Wexner the other day, and he's like 93, and he sure seemed a lot more active and than most 93-year-olds I see. So you've got him, you've got who else? You've got Rupert Murdoch. I mean, he's aged. I mean, what's going on that's helping them along the way? And there's definitely something that they were working on. But I think what was happening is a lot of it had to do with genetics. They were talking about building the best human, so to say, in some of the emails. And I think that's why they were harvesting eggs from some of these high-profile, even royalty, because they were trying to create a superior being, so to say. I know that's conspiratorial, it sounds insane, but there's a lot more evidence that points towards that direction than not. And knowing what we know now, it's highly likely that's exactly what was going on. So
have you seen that TV show, The Beauty?
No, I haven't.
Yeah, if you watch The Beauty on FX, you would you might be like, oh, there might be some science fiction here.
Exactly. So yeah, who's this, Listerman?
That guy's another one that looks like he's like definitely a little.
Don't get in his van.
What's that?
Don't get in his van for sure.
No. And there's probably candy in it.
Again, and he's somebody who is recruiting people. There's this large network of people. When we go back to the Eastern European, because what they found was it was easier to recruit Eastern European women because Eastern European women, whether it be Russia, Ukraine, all those other post-Soviet bloc countries, those women were more honestly desperate to be, in the Western world, and they also had a much more desperate need for money, obviously, because of the nations that they were in. And it was easier to deal with those women, from what I've read, than it was to deal with, Western women because of their, attitude and everything else. So they spent a lot of time recruiting Eastern European women. That's where, Melania came into play. A lot of people, don't realize her time frame and how everything aligns and these gaps. There is a gap of anywhere from about 3 to 5 years in Melania's history that I've talked about extensively. I'm not going to go into it here, but there's a solid 3 to 5 years that no one knows what she was doing. The only thing I will say is Zampoli, in one international news article, he referred to her having modeled in Germany, which even in her biography, she never says she did that. And additionally, she does speak German, which, I don't know if she speaks it better than English. She's got to speak something better than English because she doesn't speak English well. And the time frame that she disappeared, and I'm just throwing it out there, and you'd have to go to my Twitter to look at the details that I have that corroborate this, is the same time frame that Vladimir Putin was stationed in Dresden, Germany, working with the Stasi. Now, I have some inside information that I haven't shared with anybody yet, and I'm not going to go into it in tremendous detail here, of a woman, a person who contacted me, who told me that they actually engaged with Melania and Putin in Dresden, Germany back in the 80s. They literally were in a room with both of them, and also that same person was also in another situation with Melania in Slovenia. Again, due to confidentiality and what this person's doing to get this information out there, I'm not going to go into great detail, but that's a firsthand account of something we never knew. And this person's story is quite sensational. At the point that it does come out, everybody will pay attention for sure. It's not my story to tell, but it's definitely sensational. I've been talking to that person for several months now and have tons of details on it. They were trafficked as well as a child. And a lot of their story corresponds to some of the things that we're seeing here. With Sasha Barros, his father was his step or adopted father was a pilot. I had asked the specific person about helicopters and what they believe, what their experiences was. They had told me that yes, there was helicopters involved. So even though they might be abused in a certain ranch or a certain mansion, sometimes, if they were abused to the point that they were possibly even on their death's bed, they were just kind of dropped into a drop zone from a helicopter. So anyway, very sensational. Again, it's something I'm working on behind the scenes, but I have much more detailed information that at some point in the future, when I'm given the go ahead, I'll share it. So.
Sorry, I'm confused myself here.
That's okay.
Trying to, there we go. Let's try that one.
Okay there?
Yeah, I'll be able to breathe again someday.
Okay. Well, I think, when we look at somebody like Listerman, who you just had up, everything keeps coming back to Russia and Russia connections and all of these people that are in this Epstein network that are also in the Russian network, and it should start to paint a pretty clear picture of where we're at and why we're there. Are you okay?
Yeah.
Okay.
Trying to figure out what I did with my display thing here. Oh, well. I can't. Hang on. There we go.
Okay.
So, plus, don't breathe water, Tony.
Yeah.
It's not good for you.
So, there's plenty, everybody's waiting for an official list, or everybody's waiting for that one document to be released that's going to be the nail in the coffin. And I'll tell you one thing, there's probably 100 of those, but they won't really mean much because of the gaslighting we're getting and the lack of attention people are paying to this information. The biggest problem we have in the United States right now isn't necessarily this minority, but very loud MAGA group. It's the 39% of complacent Americans who choose to look the other way and not do anything to correct this issue.
I think we're having some issues.
Okay.
With YouTube rejecting comments, which is why it's so quiet today.
Okay.
But usually we have like lots and lots of comments, but today it's been very quiet. But that's okay. Yeah. You're feeling the silence all on your own. All right. So, but what you were just talking about and everything made me reminded me of something I've been thinking about. Like, there is still like roughly 40% that haven't been released. A lot of the ones that have been released are heavily redacted. We just got the news yesterday about the 13-year-old and the allegations against Trump. And without getting into whether those allegations are true or not, and I'm not making any comment on that because I don't think it's relevant to what I'm saying. The fact is the law said that they should be released. And those files weren't released. And there's a lot of files that haven't been released. And then for even if you are a Trump supporter, which, obviously neither one of us is, but even if somebody were a Trump supporter, you should want those files released if they're going to exonerate him.
Well,
by not disclosing those files, it just gives people reason to believe that he's hiding something. I mean, when you hide things, it tends to make people think you're hiding things.
Yeah, absolutely. And, and then, not only files that haven't been released, but files that were released that they took off of the DOJ website. The other day that happened. Fortunately, we have access to all the files on the Epstein Wiki group, EpsteinWiki.com group, and we were able to find the file that was removed. But the file, I was saying the other day that, them removing files only puts a spotlight on those files. And that particular file was I think it was an 800-page of depositions of Ghislaine, of Jeffrey Epstein, and a number of other people, even from your list there, that their depositions from back in the early 2010s when they were still investigating Jeffrey after he was in jail.
And how many of the people on my list there has Congress summoned?
None of them, of course.
Why? It seems like they're deliberately not subpoenaing anybody that would have answers to questions.
Of course. I mean, we've seen this 100 times before with this complicit GOP that, continues to show fealty to Trump. You can go back to the very first impeachments, having to do with the blackmail of Zelensky in Ukraine. And trying to get Zelensky to open an investigation into Biden. I mean, it's all the same story of them just, throwing shit and seeing what hits the wall and what sticks and what their followers eat up when it comes to it. And, anything to confuse and tire us from wanting to pay attention to reality. And the reality is, and these are the key things I think everybody needs to understand. Donald Trump never stopped being friends with Epstein. They were meeting up into Donald Trump's first presidency. That's undisputed fact, given the information we now know. So that tears away years of narrative from Trump about him throwing Epstein out of Mar-a-Lago. There's even emails that show Epstein inviting people to Mar-a-Lago long after all of this happened in the 2010s, saying, let's go to golf there, let's go to the pool there. So, and then there's emails showing Trump having spent time with Epstein into late 2017. So that should be of concern to everybody in the United States in terms of why did Trump lie to the American people about that, especially his supporters. It's also undisputed facts that Melania knew Epstein, Paolo Zampoli, John Casablancas, likely Joseph Massoud, and Silvio Berlusconi, as well as was the last guy I'm thinking, Flavio Briatore. She knew all of them when she was modeling in Europe long before she came to the United States, and they're all the key people that surrounded Epstein and this operation. I mean, they were feeding Epstein these Eastern European models. So Melania's knowledge and complicity in all of this goes back long before anybody wants to pay any attention. In fact, nobody wants to pay any attention to Melania's complicity when it's clear she knows exactly what was going on and what had been going on for decades.
So let's say you're in charge of the committee, hypothetically, and you can subpoena 5 people, but none of them can be named Trump.
Okay.
What 5 people would you subpoena to get answers? Like, if your goal is to actually get information and not to like make political waves.
Well, is it 5 people that will actually talk? Like they have no choice but to talk, or 'cause
5 people who are actually going to talk to you? Yeah, I mean, whether they want to or not, you know, they're you can you have some leverage of whatever reason. Like just
if I had truth serum and I was able to get these people on.
Lasso of truth.
If I had the lasso of truth, one of the main people I would ask is Zampoli, Paulo Zampoli. He has been in this since the late 80s, and he is now a special envoy to the White House who travels the world making backdoor deals. I mean, just the other day, he was saying that...
he's special envoy from where?
Pardon me? Special envoy what?
Where is he from?
Zampoli he's from Milan, Italy originally, but I don't want to go into it too much, but you know, he was friends with Trump and Epstein going back to easily that Kit Kat Club. Technically, it was Zampoli who threw the party that introduced Melania to Trump. Epstein happened to be there. I found that Roger Stone was in the room with them too, along with a handful of other people. But Paulo Zampoli then ended up dating Amanda Zingaro. They never actually got married, even though online it says they did, and they had a child together. Amanda Zingaro, at 17, and they say now 16, she flew on Epstein's plane. There's at least one log I've seen when she was 17 years old that she flew to Europe, to Paris on Epstein's with.
Yeah, he dropped again. I think YouTube is having some problems right now. Sorry about that.
Can you hear me?
Yep.
Okay, I'm sorry. I think it's the calls that messed up. I have calls coming through. So Zampoli is definitely key. Him and Amanda Zingaro were actually fixtures at both the White House and Mar-a-Lago for all Thanksgiving, Christmas, and 4th of July events leading up to, you know, the first term as president for Trump. Zampoli got into a custody battle with Amanda recently, and she was deported by ICE in October.
Amanda, who is Amanda?
Amanda is Zampoli's baby mama, who at 17 flew on Epstein's plane.
Whenever I hear the name Amanda, I think of Bart Simpson.
Yeah, no, yeah.
I'm looking for Amanda Hunderkiss. Amanda Hunderkiss.
So Zampoli is definitely somebody I would want on the stand. He'd lie his ass off. I have no doubt about it, because they all do for Trump. But he definitely he's somebody I would want to get on the stand. Somebody else that I would want to question about things, and you said it can't be a Trump, so I'll go a different direction, is Jared Kushner. Jared Kushner, I have written extensively about this. I have zero doubts that Jared Kushner has taken over the worldwide Epstein operation. I think he was groomed for it. He was close friends with MBS. We see what he's doing, you know, with these peace talks, even though he's not technically, does not work for our government. We see that he got billions of dollars from the Middle East. He's working on properties for Russian oligarchs in Albania.
That would
And-
explain why they don't want to have a background check done on him.
Well, yeah, he can't qualify for a background check. He can't qualify for a basic security clearance. And a lot of people don't realize that a lot of those stolen documents that ended up at Mar-a-Lago were actually requested by Jared Kushner, and it had been reported back during Trump's first term that Kushner had requested an extraordinary amount of classified information to be sent to the White House, much of which never was returned, and a lot of which ended up at Mar-a-Lago or has since disappeared. So Jared Kushner truly is a smoking gun here, who I believe has taken over the Epstein operation. And they even discussed Jared in the emails. If any of the, we're missing a ton of emails, obviously. I think a lot of what we are missing is probably direct contact between Kushner and Epstein. We see some contact where they're talking to lawyers and stuff. There's one email where Epstein asked, should I send this directly to Jared or do you got it? And it had to do with this lawyer that was talking to Epstein. So I truly believe Epstein or Jared Kushner is a huge part of this and has taken over that operation now. So I would want him on the stand. He's not a Trump, so I'd say let's get him up there. And then also these assistants, especially the one, I don't know, is it Nadia Marchenko who's the one that was the primary beneficiary for his estate?
Let me check.
She should be the one that was the last one to speak to him on the phone before he died.
No, I think that was Kellen. Wait.
Okay, it was Kellen. I think.
Oh no, you know what? It was Leslie Goff.
Okay. So obviously Leslie Groff, I definitely would want her on the stand. She knows where the bodies are buried. And I think I would go to maybe at least one of the key money people that was handling the money, maybe somebody that's listed up. I would probably go with everybody on your list there if we had access to them. A lot of them have dropped off the radar. When it comes to the list of people that I have here, I have, Zampoli, Casablancas has now died. He died of cancer. John-Luc Brunel in 2022 was literally suicided practically to the T, the same way that Epstein was. Cameras weren't working, and all of a sudden he dies. Joseph Massoud has disappeared off the radar. He's been gone for a number of years, and he's still believed to be alive, but he is nowhere to be found. So those are definitely key people involved in the Epstein operation.
So next thing I want to do is I want to start going over, I think, some of the people that, of course, there are a lot more than is on this list, but at least people we know have been accused of things.
Mm-hmm.
And we'll start with the Andrew
Montbatten
Windsor, aka
former Prince.
I like to refer to him now as Raggedy Andy.
Yeah. Well, it's interesting. There's a lot about Andrew. One is, it's obvious he was heavily involved in all of this, and he needed to go down, and hopefully, knock on wood, this may take care of the monarchy, which it's fine in my opinion, but I'm not British, so who am I to say? Fergie, his wife, was very involved in Epstein too. She even offered to be an assistant, apparently at one time, but Epstein actually loaned her thousands, if not millions of dollars because of her spending problem. So I think Epstein had kind of a hold on both Andrew and Fergie based off of Fergie's spending problem and Andrew's pedophilia problem, and they were basically willing to do whatever that they needed to do to help Epstein along the way. But the interesting thing is you look at that next generation of things, and I already talked about Jared Kushner. Obviously he's married to Ivanka, and their group of people they run around with includes Wendy Dang, who is Rupert Murdoch's third wife. Also, Dasha Zhukova, who is the Russian oligarch Roman Abramovich's ex-wife. She's now married to a Greek billionaire. And Dasha's mother, I forget, Elena Zhukova, just married Rupert Murdoch last year, so she's his fifth wife. And another person that hangs out with them is Beatrice, Princess Beatrice, Andrew and Fergie's daughter. There's a picture that a lot of people have seen of all of them at the 2016 US Open, and Beatrice is there. And another picture that a lot of people are familiar with, there's a picture of Epstein with Harvey Weinstein and Ghislaine, and they're all in costume. Epstein's wearing a military uniform. And what people don't realize about that event that they were at is that was Beatrice's 18th birthday party.
Oh my goodness.
That should tell you everything you need to know about how horrible those people are.
Is that like she was too old for Jeffrey at that point?
Yeah, apparently. But Harvey was there.
Harvey was there. Harvey gets the leftover. So do you think that Andrew's brother knows about about this?
Absolutely, I have no doubt whatsoever. I mentioned earlier that I have pictures from looks like they're from the 70s and early 80s, where Robert Maxwell is with both Princess Di and separately also with King Charles, who's Prince back then. So I have no doubt, based off of their familial connections going back decades, that King Charles knows exactly what was going on, and should be held account to that as well.
So how about Alan Lakowitz?
Oh God, the Alan piece of shits is what I call him. He has been, recently, just this weekend, I think it was said that he is actually a Mossad agent. I haven't I haven't dived too much into that, but I think there's a lot of bearing to it when you look at his history. During Epstein's first trial, he went out of his way looking at the MySpace pages of all of the victims and trying to discredit them based off of their social life. And for decades, he has, put himself front and center, countering this narrative of sexual abuse of children to some extent, to the extent that he's even pushed for the legal limits, age, sexual limit of age, I forget what's the word, age of consent to be lowered. Dershowitz is just a giant piece of crap that really, he lied about getting a massage from a Russian woman when in fact it was, a child, again, or one of the younger girls, which they were all children. And he's just one of those people that is very, very much into this. I think he's connected directly to Mossad. I read something recently where he educated or trained both Jared Kushner and Josh Kushner when they were young. We know that the Kushner family is very close to the Netanyahus. The Netanyahu, Bibi, has spent time at their family home in New Jersey when he comes and visits the United States, so much so that he slept in Jared's room when he stays with them. There's a lot of connection and depth that goes into all of this, but Dershowitz is a key too. I wouldn't get him on the stand because he's such a liar. I just don't think it's worth it. I think it'd be a waste of time unless you had true serum and made him spit it all out.
But Virginia Guffrey said under oath that he had violated her, right?
Yes, absolutely. Yep.
That's not just fringe allegations.
Nope, not at all. Yep. And there's I have a page somewhere that talks about specifically, and it goes in detail about that abuse too. And it's funny, when you put stuff out there and you've got, all these trolls. I put something out there last night about Melania and her connections to all the people that I had mentioned. And I woke up this morning. It's always interesting to wake up in the morning when you put something like that out there, because all these foreign trolls spent the night coming at me. So I'll wake up to a million notifications and a million comments from all these trolls because they're in Africa and Europe, and Eastern Europe. So, with these regular names, but you look and you see they're in Nigeria or something. But it's just
You ever
very
want to do
interesting.
like one of those Always Sunny in Philadelphia boards with like strings, all the people that are attached to all the people, and I don't know if there's enough string in the world.
Yeah, well, it's funny because you say that because I don't know if you know who Michael Caputo is. He's the former spokesperson for the Health and Human Services during the Trump administration in 2020. He was the one that was actually rewriting COVID reports that didn't look good for Trump. He would rewrite them so that they didn't sound as bad. He also had at one point in the past lived in Russia and was hired to help Putin rebuild his image. And he's just, again, another all-around piece of crap. Maybe another time you can have me on the show and we could talk about this other piece of this. But Michael Caputo constantly jumps into my comments, trolling me because I've exposed a number of his friends, and he actually used that particular meme that you're talking about from It's Sunny in Philadelphia with that board and the strings that you're talking about. He has posted that because he tries to pretend I'm a conspiracy theorist.
Yeah. But ironically, he probably pushed the Joe Biden paid Anthony Fauci to get China to create the COVID virus so that Donald Trump would lose.
Exactly. Yeah. Well, and he's the one that coined the coffee boy term about George Papadopoulos, trying to diminish George's role in everything. So, yeah. So I actually wrote, once he came after, he threatened to sue me about 2 months ago, Michael Caputo, for no reason, just because I was talking shit. So once he threatened to sue me, I wrote a more comprehensive thread about what kind of piece of shit he is. And then I said, go ahead, let's go to court. I'd like to see discovery. So they're all cowards. Nothing's going to happen.
So what about this Jean-Luc Brunel? Who is he?
So I had mentioned before, obviously he's tied into all of this. He was Epstein in 2022 while he was in jail. He flew on the plane with Amanda Ungaro when she was 17 years old to Paris. And Amanda's the one that was, quote unquote, married Paolo Zampoli and had a child. Jean-Luc was known for his sexual abuse of young women and children. And he had been in the circle of this trafficking operation going back to the mid 80s at least. I had found a news article in Italy, and it was also in Iran, the same article from an Iranian and an Italian paper that discusses, they all had different roles, and Zampoli's role in this trafficking operation was the visas. He was the guy that got people that helped these Eastern European women get to the United States. And like we know, when Melania came to the United States, she worked, I think it was 10 months before she was legal to work and earn $20,000 from a number of modeling jobs that she did when Zampoli brought her to the United States before she was actually able to procure a proper visa, which was not the Einstein visa. That didn't come till later. But Zampoli's role was the visas. I'm not sure what Jean-Luc's role was. I think it was more just managing the girls in Europe and doing all of that. But he was very much deep in this whole operation for sure. And they didn't want him to talk, so they suicided him.
Oh, so he got the he got assisted suicide package.
Yeah, he got the assisted suicide package as well.
And what about Marvin Minsky?
Now, I've heard about him, but I haven't heard a lot about him. I'm going to read what you have up here, see if anything.
He was an MIT professor.
Okay.
And then Virginia Guffey testified stated in a sworn statement that she was directed by Epstein to have sex with
Marvin Minsky, yeah.
at the U.S. Virgin Islands compound. Yeah, the U.S. Virgin Islands compound. That's what we call Epstein Island, right?
Okay, yes, USVI, yeah, Epstein Island, yep. Well, no, I think there's plenty of people that we're going to find, as more and more information comes out, we're tied directly to these abuse circumstances. Another one that pretends like he's not involved, but he's very involved, Woody Allen. I mean, look at how much communication he had. They spent a lot of time together in New York. I mean, it's mind-boggling the amount of people that associated themselves with Epstein who pretend that they weren't involved or were unaware of what was going on, when in fact, as more and more information comes out, it's clear they were directly involved and they were doing very bad things as well. But they will lie until they can no longer lie, one way or the other.
Apparently, do you know something about an Epstein MIT financial relationship?
I think so, and I think if this is the one I'm thinking, Minsky I might have seen the email where they were talking about a $25,000 donation that was being returned once the spotlight had been on Epstein. So a lot of these organizations were pressured to get back the money. But this email specifically talks about how they're being forced to return the money, but it actually talks about how they're going to go, and Epstein's in this email, how they're going to find a roundabout way to fill in the money outside of Epstein. So
that's like there was something about fake returning the money.
Exactly.
Like they could look like they returned the money, but not actually return it.
Exactly. And I think that, again, follow the money. I think there's going to be a lot of that as we continue to find more information, especially with these institutions that Epstein was donating, tens of thousands of dollars to annually.
What about this guy, Miroslav Lajkov?
Now that, I am not familiar with that person. Let's see, Slovak politician. Access to young girls. So I think, again, this just goes back to, this being a sanctioned worldwide operation.
He was president of the UN General Assembly from 2017 to 2000. So this goes into your rich and powerful Epstein.
Exactly. Yeah, they all do.
You're talking about, you've got some of the most powerful people in the world for the last 40 years, all connected to this. This plays right into that. This guy was not a nobody, just because we never.
Well, and the crazy thing is they're all trying to distance themselves and whatnot. Or I didn't realize what he was into. Just like Naomi Campbell, drives me crazy. I mean, she knew exactly what was going on.
I didn't know anything about Naomi Campbell being involved in this until you just said it. And high school me just had a crush die.
Oh, I am sorry, but I'll tell you a little bit about Naomi Campbell. So obviously you can find a number of pictures of her with Ghislaine. There's pictures of her with Ghislaine and Trump and Melania. There's a picture of her with a number of other people. But she was at about the time that she was good friends with Ghislaine, she was engaged to Vladislav Doronin, who's considered the Donald Trump of Moscow real estate. And Doronin actually, they were living in Miami at the time. Believe it or not, I had a friend who actually used to be a estate manager, a house manager for the rich, billionaire type people. In Vegas, he was the house manager for the Fertittas, who owned Stations Casinos, and he had left that in the early 2010s. And I think it was about 2011 or 2012, he actually got hired by Vladislav Doronin. And this friend of mine went to Miami to live on that compound on Billionaires Row or whatever that is. And he had even invited us down to stay with him. We never took him up on it. I've lost contact with him. I wish I could contact him again. But I remember joking with him not to get slapped by Naomi Campbell like she did with the maid. But Naomi Campbell, there's that famous picture on the boat where you can see Virginia Giuffre right in front of her. Flavio Briatore is over to the left, and Ghislaine Maxwell is in the picture too. And that's pretty telling right there. It was Naomi's, I think, her 50th birthday party, maybe not her 50th, but maybe her 40th birthday party or something like that, maybe even earlier. But I know it was a birthday party for her, and Naomi's there. And Naomi, look, she was part of Victoria's Secret. That there's no surprise that there was some nefarious activities revolving, the limited brands and Victoria's Secret and a lot of other stuff.
Victoria's Secret. That's what's his name?
Les Wexner, yes. Yeah. And, Abercrombie and Fitch as well. We've heard things there. We're seeing things recently. So Naomi is not innocent, but she pretends like she knew nothing. And that's absolutely a lie. I guarantee Naomi knew much more than she says. And, the thing, talking about just all these tentacles and these different angles things go, Vladislav Doronin owns Amman Resorts. Amman Resorts actually is working on a development in Albania right now on an island, and it's going to be a Amman Resort, but the people handling that development are Ivanka and Jared. They are handling that development in Albania. Now, the other thing a lot of people don't realize is Charles McGonigal, who was the FBI special agent in charge of the New York field office in October 2016 when he got assigned there, basically when he showed up there was when all hell broke loose. He was hired to be a Russian counterintelligence expert, when in fact all the shit went to hell as soon as he got there. Now after he left the FBI, he was convicted. He was indicted of taking bribes from Oleg Deripaska after he left the FBI, and ultimately he was then charged separately for taking bribes from Albanian officials. Now, the one thing I brought up, and I just talked to another independent journalist about this the other day, and she's going to have a story coming out about this real soon, is I spent 2 months last year, starting in the end of May, speaking with Alison Guerrero, who was Charles McGonigal's mistress at the time, while he was in New York. And she ultimately, after 2 months, admitted that she targeted me because I was exposing her friends. That's how Mike Caputo found me, was because she's friends with Alison Guerrero. But the interesting thing that people don't realize is Alison's best friends, like literal best friends, are Rudy Giuliani, Roger Stone, Mike Flynn, Ken Kurson, all of the bad people tied to all of this. And wow. And she just so happened to be the person that was dating the FBI guy when everything went to hell. And she told
these people happen to be associated with Trump, happen to be associated with one another, happen to be associated with Epstein, but we're somehow supposed to believe that Trump didn't know anything about what was going on with Epstein. And the other thing I want to just mention about all of this that maybe you can add on. One of the things that annoys me is they talk, you always hear in the news about this person associated with Trump after he was, convicted.
Yeah.
And what I'm much more concerned about the connection, the people that were connected to Epstein before he was convicted. Like Donald Trump, like even if you believe all the stuff about, him ending his relationship with Epstein, he was besties with Epstein during the peak of his criminal enterprise. Epstein
yes, he was.
Numerous numbers for him in his black book. He literally sent girls to go give Epstein massages. Epstein recruited from Mar-a-Lago. All of these things are facts. None of that is even just an allegation. All of this is known and proven to be true. Then when they turn over the stuff, the 2 years where he was absolutely at his peak around 2000, 2001, 2002, whether that has anything to do with 9/11 or not, I don't know. I've heard some stuff, but that was a peak of his enterprise, and they don't give you anything about that. And then they deliberately hide other stuff to do with Trump. It makes you wonder, if nothing else, it definitely gives people reason to believe there's something up.
Oh, I agree 100%. My overall take on this is Epstein was not an intelligence asset of a single entity. I think he was kind of a freelance intelligence guy that worked with multiple nations doing multiple things, and it was all sanctioned by intelligence. I think our intelligence agencies have been compromised for decades. There's a lot of evidence that suggests that, and a lot of that has to do with Epstein. Even with the research that I've done leading up to all of these drops of all these files and stuff, I was mind blown to see how much closer Epstein was to everything I had written about long before all of this stuff came out. I mean, I didn't realize that Epstein was going to be another one of the smoking guns having to do specifically with Russia, so to say, more so than what he actually is. He very much is a big part of that, the Russian involvement in placing Trump into the White House, and it's shocking that so many people welcomed Epstein back, but I think it's because of what he could do for them. And you're right, a lot of stuff is being hidden, and I think that's going to be the worst of the worst. You're right, there's question about 9/11 and the role there. A lot of people don't realize that the Saudi Arabians bought the 45th floor of Trump World Tower in Lower Manhattan in June of 2001, 3 months before 9/11. They bought the full first floor or 45th floor of not Trump Tower, but Trump World Tower. And that should bring some questions to mind. The Saudis bailed him out a number of times with his yacht. A Saudi billionaire bought it, and the same Saudi billionaire also bought the Plaza Hotel from Trump when he was having financial hardships. So the ties go deep, and I think if we ever see, and we better because it's a law, these other files, it's going to get even worse. We don't know what the law, we haven't seen any logs from recently. I think we need to look at Trump's logs going back decades, his flight logs, and see where he was at. But even then, it's going to be difficult to really put the picture together because they're obfuscating so much of everything. They're making it difficult for people to digest this information, and that's all intentional.
So you had mentioned before about Jared Kushner.
Mm-hmm.
And we always talk about who's pulling Trump's strings. He doesn't seem all that particularly cogent anymore. He just spews hate and rants nonsense. Mm-hmm. And it seems like on foreign policy, at least Stephen Miller is the one pulling the strings. But in all his foreign policy, would you say it's Jared Kushner?
Yes, absolutely. You have to look at Jared's ties to MBS, and his ties to a number of other things that have happened. His ties to Bibi Netanyahu. I think I even thought during Trump's first term, I was like, Ivanka's like the secret VP, because she always snuck around and showed up at things. And I remember her sitting in his chair at a UN thing or an international thing. She always tried to insert herself in things. And I always thought Kushner was the secret Secretary of State who was running around the world making all these back channel deals during the first term. Now it's not so much back channel as it is in front of our faces. I mean, in what world would anybody like Jared Kushner be sitting in front of Vladimir Putin with no title and nothing else, and everybody just shrugs it off because he's Trump's son-in-law? I mean, we live in an insane world right now.
So, yeah. There's also the other guy, Wolkoff or whatever his name is.
Yeah. Oh, yeah, the Witkoff guy.
Witkoff, yeah.
I think he's just kind of a puppet that's there he's the official person that's running around. But Jared's the one actually pulling the strings, my opinion.
But you get the same people that are involved in these peace talks with both Russia and Gaza.
Yep. Well, and then you've got Gaza being a whole other nightmare.
Yeah.
And that's something that's been planned for a number of years. I mean, if anybody thinks that they weren't planning on, leveling Gaza 10 years ago, you're pretty far behind on things. My honest opinion.
And You know, I was talking with Pat. I was talking about this on the show yesterday with Patsy. Remember when he waved the plans in front of the one writer's face, and they got it on audio tape?
Yep, I talked about that as well. Yep.
You remember what those were plans for?
They were plans for Iran, attacking Iran. Yep.
And so now when he's talking about invading Iran, that's not something that came up. That's something he's been wanting to do. Why did he have war plans drawn up to invade Iran in his first presidency?
Exactly. Exactly. I mean, this is a long-term operation, and I think, if you, I'm seeing more and more about the 2020 election being rigged in a way that makes sense that all three elections were rigged for Trump. The only reason 2020 didn't work is because of COVID and the amount of mail-in ballots that came through. When in fact the machines had already been manipulated. Because it's hard to believe when we looked at, when you go back to 2016, it's still gut wrenching to think of that night when they announced Trump actually had won, because everything leading up to that, it made zero sense whatsoever. And then when you fast forward to 2024 and everything that we had already been through and the lack of enthusiasm at his rallies versus what we saw happening with Kamala and everything around there, it's shocking. I don't think there's any example in history where that type of energy was happening and the candidate lost. You know, it's there's a loud minority of people, but I don't think it's 77 million people that voted for Trump. Honestly, legit.
It's hard to believe that he got more votes after he tried a coup.
Yeah, we haven't even talked about that bullshit. Anyway, sorry.
But I think that helps me. I think it'll probably help people that are watching this too. Do you have anything you want to pitch while you're on the show? You have a Twitter handle you want to pitch, or a book, or anything like that?
So I haven't written my book yet. I have about 5 of them I need to write. But I would say, come find me on Twitter. It's Anthon, Anthon, the number 7, the letter Y, Andrews, Andrews. So Anthon7 Yandrews. I had to, my main account was nuked back last August because the stuff I was sharing that was legitimate. And the best thing to do is start with my pinned thread. You'll get an idea of a lot of the work that I've done, but my pinned thread is only about 10% of everything I have. I've dealt with Russian agents. I've dealt with a lot of these nefarious people. Felix Sater I've talked to, Patrick Byrne I've talked to. A lot of the really bad people in all of this have somehow been willing to tell me that they're bad people and prove it to me. So, along with a number of other things that I've done. So, please find me on Twitter, Anthon7 Yandrews, and I have a Substack under the same name. I don't use that as much, but the front line of this information war is Twitter. So, let's go there and be effective.
All right. I'll make sure to put those in the description on YouTube.
Okay. Awesome. Right. Thank you.
Thanks a lot.
No problem. Yeah. Okay. Take care. Bye.
All right. Everybody, I'm going to take a quick break, and I'll be right back to talk about the State of the Union. All right, I'm back. Thanks for waiting. If you did, let's see if there's anybody here. No, we lost everybody. That's okay. Maybe somebody will come back. So let's talk about the State of the Union. Not the actual State of the Union, but Trump's State of the Union speech last night, which was really an embarrassment. It lasted an hour and 47 minutes. It was by far the longest State of the Union in American history. And on top of being the longest, it was also arguably the least popular. Only 38% of people had a very positive reaction to it, which might seem like it's kind of high until you figure that the majority of people that like the overwhelming majority of people that watched it were actually Republicans, like are actually Trump supporters. Most of the people that voted for him didn't want to watch it. Trying to figure out the best. Maybe this one. All right. So most people that voted for him didn't watch it. There were at least 20 lies. I predicted before the speech that he would lie at least one time, and yeah, I was not shocked. I have some of the lies here. I don't think it's possible to do an exhaustive list of all of the lies, but the man lied a lot. So let's go through some of them. The economic lies. Everybody knew coming in that he was going to have to lie about the economy. Everybody knew he wasn't going to tell the truth about the economy. Come on, Kelly. All right, so let's look at some of the economic lies. He said he inflated the worst inflation in history. That was absolutely not true. He did not, believe it or not, inherit the worst inflation in history. Actually, inflation was not all that different from where it is right now. It's not substantively different. Joe Biden had already been bringing inflation down for 2 years. And the inflation that Joe Biden was bringing down wasn't even really Joe Biden's fault. But that's another story. He repeated the claim that tariffs are paid by foreign countries. He's said this many, many times. And he gets called out on it many, many times. And he keeps saying it even though he's been called out on it. Now, I do not have a degree from Wharton. But I know that tariffs are not paid by other countries. Tariffs are paid by the person that does the importing. Very, very occasionally, technically it can, like there can be like a way where somebody else makes the actual payment, but it's still invoiced to the importing company. And that's very, very, very rarely. But the way that they work is the importer pays the tariff, and they have to pay the tariff before the product is released. Otherwise, it's just sitting in the shipping yard until you pay the tariffs. And so then that tariff gets passed on to the manufacturer that's bringing in the goods, or it gets passed on to the customer from them. And there's something called a pass-through rate. And a pass-through rate means whatever the tariff is. Let's say that this tariff was 20% on $1,000, right? So that would mean that the importer paid $200. And then let's say that $180 of that was recovered from the consumers. So that'd be 90% of the $200. 90% of the tariff that the customer ended up paying. So whatever percent the customer ends up paying is called the pass-through rate. And the pass-through rate on the tariffs that Trump imposed in his Liberation Day thing was 80%, was 90%. Almost all of it ended up being paid for by the consumers. And that's just math. And that's just the way tariffs work. Like this is not like a debate or a controversy. There's no spin involved. That is what tariffs are. That is how they work. He said we have the largest tax cuts in history. Fact. Let me enlarge this. He said we had in fact, we had the 6th largest per tax cut in history, not the largest. Per the Tax Foundation, Reagan's 1981 cuts were nearly 3 times larger as a percentage of GDP. And in addition, who those tax cuts were for matters a lot. The bulk of those tax cuts were saving rich people money, not normal people money. And we'll get into that a little bit later. Some more on that. The economy is roaring like never before, he said. The facts are GDP growth is 2.2% in 2025 if you put the whole year in perspective, which was lower than every single year Biden was president. And unemployment rose from 4% to 4.3%. He said there was $18 trillion of foreign investment. That's not even remotely close to anywhere near anything plausibly true. If we really had $18 trillion in foreign investment, just to put things in perspective, that would increase our GDP by 50%. Like, no, we did not have a 50% jump in GDP. Our GDP is in the low 30s of trillions. So White House site, it's not even what his, lying site says, which is 9.6 trillion, which is in itself an inflated number. And nobody can remotely explain the 18 trillion. But here's the reality of it all, right? That trillions of dollars or whatever is all, none of that is actualized. And none of that is actionable. None of that is guaranteed. That's just other countries saying that they will, send this money someday. And it's not like other countries weren't already investing money in America. But if you want to know the truth, there's something called FDI, which is foreign dollars invested. And the actual amount of foreign dollars invested in 2025 was down 33.7% from 2024. So the actual reality is all these tariffs that are supposed to do all this stuff to gin up other countries, all these trade wars that are supposed to get other countries to pay for things and invest all this money in the United States, none of it is happening. None of it. It's just not happening. In fact, we are losing foreign dollars invested. We're losing manufacturing jobs. We're getting the exact opposite of what he is claiming credit for. Sorry. That was a little bit gross. I apologize. He said 70,000 construction jobs were added. The fact is that it was only 44,000, which is a fraction of what it was of the increase that was going on under Biden. And the other part of that reality is most, if not all, of those 44,000 jobs were actually because of the stimulus packages that came under Biden. Those were contracts that were, it's not like, you know, Joe Biden's spending bills the day after they were signed, all the jobs came about that next day. There's a rollout involved. There's planning involved. So, you know, under Biden, there were some things that happened under Trump that were executed under Biden, and it's always that way. There's always like a 2-3 year period before everything is actualized from a budget. It's not an instantaneous thing. So a lot of these 44,000 jobs, or the 70,000 jobs that he was claiming credit for, and the 44,000 that actually happened, were a result of Biden's policies, not Trump's. Trump's policies actually cost jobs. Okay, so let's see if we got. Can you imagine putting yourself in something positive and what you. I don't know what that means, Silver. I don't know. What do you mean put yourself in something positive and what you could do? I don't know what positive thing I'm supposed to be putting myself in. Claim, he said, so going on. Donald Trump claimed 0 illegal aliens were admitted in 9 months. That's not actually true, but it is, and it's not. I want to explain something. When you talk about illegal aliens being admitted, you're talking about an oxymoron. Illegal aliens can get through the border. They can sneak around, but then they're not admitted. Like, nobody's letting in illegal aliens. They're sneaking over. Then there's also the fact that asylum seekers are not illegal aliens. Asylum seekers are admitted, but they're legally admitted. They're following the laws of asylum. What he really means is there weren't any asylum seekers admitted in 9 months, which is actually not what the law says. There's a law regarding asylum, and he's not following it. But there were 28,000 gotaways in 2025, continuing into 2026. Those are people that snuck over the border. The claim is also logically incoherent. If someone was admitted, they entered legally. If they entered illegally, they weren't admitted. Trump invented a metric that proves itself true by definition, while real numbers contradict it. He said half of Minnesota's $18 billion in social services stolen by Somalis. Actually, he said $19 billion were stolen by Somalis. But the DOJ is saying that it's $9 billion, which there's no evidence of that. I think the actual proven amount is like $1 billion. And those people were prosecuted and convicted before Trump was president. And some of those were Somalis, but there were a lot of Somalis that weren't involved. The ringleader, by the way, was a white woman. He referred to them as pirates, because that's not at all racist. While Representative Ilhan Omar sat nearby because somehow because she's Somali, she's responsible for every crime that anybody that's Somali convicted. And then there was this incredibly racist thing. It was like double racism. He claimed, and he had this Irina Zarutska, who was a Ukraine refugee of all things, was murdered by a black man. And that black man, his name was DeCarlos Brown. He was born and raised in Charlotte, North Carolina. He went to high school in West Charlotte. He was a U.S. citizen with a criminal history dating back to 2011, and he had absolutely no connection to the border at all. But Donald Trump called him an illegal alien. He says the killer came in through open borders. And the reality, the irony is that Zarutska was actually the immigrant here who was over here as a refugee. when she would deny her the chance to come over here. But no, he was able to sit there and present her grieving mother as an example of what happens to illegal, or how illegal immigrants are coming over here and killing American citizens, by showing an American citizen that killed a legal immigrant. On foreign policy, what he said versus what is true. He claimed, we haven't heard Iran say they'll never build a nuclear weapon. The fact is, Iran's foreign minister posted this on the same day as the speech. Hang on. I bet you're fun. I am fun at parties, by the way. But, I don't understand why the president of the United States lying and stating racist things needs to be presented in a fun way. Would you like some popcorn with that? Like, how am I supposed to make that fun? The U.S. strikes obliterated Iran's. He claimed that Iran will never build a nuclear weapon. The fact is that even just that day, the Iranian president said it at the UN. Multiple Iranian leaders have stated this position repeatedly. I mean, it's just a lie. He made the claim U.S. strikes obliterated Iran's nuclear program. So why do we need to go to war with them now? If they're already obliterated, then how do they have it back so fast? Either you lied when you were saying they were obliterated, or you're lying now. And if you weren't here earlier, we were talking about he drew up battle plans to invade Iran in his first term. He had his generals draw this up. Don't think for a second he wasn't planning this. It does not matter what Iran is doing or not doing right now. What matters is Donald Trump wants to invade Iran. It's inevitable. It's not a choice. Right now we've got the largest U.S. military buildup in the Middle East since the 2003 Iraq invasion. And, I've just seen too many generals give too many interviews that have said, you don't have that kind of buildup unless you're planning on doing something with it. So he also lied about Venezuela and China. So on January 3rd, 2026, Delta Force raided Caracas and captured President Maduro and his wife, and they were transported. I actually prefer the word kidnapping. They were transported to New York for narco-terrorism charges, which, by the way, if you actually look at the indictment about those narco-terrorism charges, they're like from 20 years ago, and they're against his wife, not even against Maduro. And then he is an accomplice to her. Chinese and Russian military technology failed, using that as a taunt, as though conquering Venezuela is some, like, you're not the reason that the military exists, Donald. The military supremacy of the United States has nothing whatsoever to do with Donald Trump, no matter what Donald Trump and Pete Kegsbreath tell you. The elephant in the room. Trump mentioned China exactly once in the entire speech, and this was it. The only time he mentioned China in the entire speech. And he's the one that's always talking about how China is like the big enemy, but he doesn't talk about it. Why didn't he talk about China? That's the U.S.'s primary strategic competitor. He got one mention. He talked about Joe Biden 4 times, and he only talked about China 1 time. And, with this whole thing, I would like to remind you that Donald Trump once again broke the law when he invaded Venezuela without notifying Congress. This one, though, and I think I'm going to change my view here because I think this is important to talk about. And we got a few comments here. Are you atheist? No, I spent 15 years as a Christian minister. I'm not a atheist at all. I don't understand why some people feel like they have a moral grip on the Christian faith. Actually, there's nothing Christian about the Republican Party. It's actually very, very anti-Christian. Oh, Winner wants the popcorn. No offense. I'm not offended. I just really am curious as to why you think that somebody isn't a Christian just because they, or is an atheist just because they don't think that Donald Trump is a good person. You think it's that I hate this guy? And so there's nothing more to say? I'm just going to say that you're a member of a Trump cult. Like, that's such a weird and sad, just a really, really sad. Hang on a second. I just realized something. Hey, Google, turn on the lights. Sorry, I just realized my lights. There. That'll clear some things up. But yeah. Did you hate Obama? Did you hate Biden? Like, come on. Donald Trump, you've got to learn to let people criticize Donald Trump without bringing your emotional baggage into it. All right, so this is something I want to talk about. The thing, whether you like Trump or not, the thing you have to recognize, the thing you have to understand is the reason he's really taking a hit in the polls right now is the economy. And not just the economy, the K-shaped economy. When we talk about a K-shaped economy, that means there's like two slopes. One is going up, if you can imagine a letter K, one going up, one going down. There's two slopes, one going up, one going down. The one going up is 80% of our revenue. Or 80 the one going up, I'm sorry. The one going up is 20%, the top 20% of income earners. The one going down is 80% of income earners. And for 80% of the country right now, the economy sucks. For 80% of the country right now, we are in a recession, effectively. For the other 20%, things are gangbusters. So when Donald Trump sits there and talks about how well the Dow is doing and how well the stocks are doing, that's great for people that own stocks and have money. But for the people that can't afford health care now, it's not like they have money to invest in stocks if they don't have money to pay for their health insurance because the price of food is going too high. And so him sitting there just repeating lie after lie after lie about how food prices are getting better does not help him. Nobody's sitting there going, oh, you know what? You're right. I have plenty of money to buy food with now. This man has never even set foot in a grocery store. At least that's my guess. I doubt he has ever gone to a grocery store and bought milk. And now he wants to take tariffs and replace the modern day income tax system. That's what he said last night. And I just want you to really think about that. Right now, we have a progressive tax system. Income taxes are progressive, which means the more money you make, the higher percentage of your income you pay. And there's a lot of good reasons for that. But another way of looking at it is the less money you make, the less of a percentage of your income you have to pay. You get a tax break for being poor because you simply do not have enough money to pay the same amount of money as Elon Musk. Elon Musk could pay 20% of his income, 30% of his income, 40% of his income, and it wouldn't make a difference to Elon Musk. But you take somebody in poverty and you tax 20% of their income, they don't even have enough money to pay for rent anymore. And so when you take tariffs here's the thing about tariffs. They don't show up on tax returns. You can't get a tax refund on tariffs. That's just straight up comes out of your bill when you go to the grocery store. Not even like a sales tax. At least you can look at the sales tax and see what you paid. You can't, there's no tariff marker on your bill. It's just added on the shelf. So here's the reality. Right now, tax collections are 13 times larger. Like the total amount of our income taxes are 13 times larger than tariff revenue. That means if we're going to replace income taxes with tariffs, we would require tariff rates so high they'd collapse international trade. And especially since tariffs only are based on what you spend. Right? They're not based on what you invest. There's no tariff on investing in the stock market. There's only tariffs on goods and services that you buy. Well, actually goods that are imported. It's theoretically impossible to do it. That's number one. But the more you shift that way, the more you're shifting from a progressive tax system to a regressive tax system, to where the less money you make, the higher percentage of your income you pay in taxes. It's literally punishing people for being poor. Tariffs are a consumption tax. Lower income households spend a larger share of their income on traded goods and save less. Yale Budget Lab, the burden is 3 times larger as a share of income for low income versus high income households. So you see what I'm saying? It's definitely hurting poor people more than rich people versus progressive income taxes, which the richer you are and the more you can afford it, the higher percentage of your income you pay. And I see this dumb, ridiculously moronic, rock-brained argument from MAGAs. Well, we did this for all the way up until, the first 150 years of our existence. What's so wrong with it? Well, it was wrong. That's why we switched, morons. That's why we switched. The 16th Amendment deliberately moved the U.S. from tariff-based revenue to gradual income tax because tariffs were regressive. And because the amount of spending the government had to do was going up. He wants to go back to 1890. I swear when he talks about making America great again, he wants to return to the Industrial Revolution when you had child labor and no education and we lived off of tariffs and all of that kind of stuff. All right. The constitutional address used as a campaign rally. He had, we got this guy right here sitting there asking about why I need to be negative towards almost everything. I'm not negative towards everything. I'm negative towards Trump because Trump is a negative person. Donald Trump's the one that puts the bully in bully pulpit. He had direct attacks on Democrats in a way that no president, I've never seen something like this. He told the Democrats, these people are crazy. I'm telling you, they're crazy. He called them crazy multiple times, like spittle flying out of his mouth as he called them crazy. Democrats are destroying our country. They want to cheat. They have cheated. How have they cheated? By made up things, like by having immigrants come over and vote illegally. Just completely made up racist nonsense, replacement theory nonsense. Just absolute racist rhetoric in the middle of the State of the Union. Just vile, disgusting, racist rhetoric. Vile, disgusting, racist rhetoric about how a black man killed a white woman. Even personally called out Nancy Pelosi. Too bad she didn't have her speech behind him to tear up again. He's the one that's, this says 3 billion. It's actually more like 4 billion. He tried, remember when Joe Biden, I don't know if you'll remember this. Maybe you do, maybe you don't. But Joe Biden had, during one of his State of the Unions, I think it was the 2023 one, the Republicans were all talking about how they were going to, there was all this whispers about how they were going to, cut Medicaid benefits and all of this kind of stuff. And he was talking about that, and then they called him a liar. And so then he was like, well, then promise you're not going to do it. He kind of went off script. He said, all right. Does that mean you're not going to do it? Go ahead, stand up if you're not going to do it. And so now they were kind of, they had to, right? They had just been sitting there saying he was a liar for saying they would. Now, if they don't stand up and say they won't, then they look like the liars, right? And so everybody talked about, like, that was so smart of Biden to do that, to flip that script on them. And it worked for 2 years anyway. They still ended up cutting it as soon as he wasn't president anymore. But Donald Trump has a vacation home in Joe Biden's head. And, well, I'm sorry, Joe Biden has a vacation home in Donald Trump's head, I should say, because he lives there permanently, on permanent vacation. Joe Biden, Donald Trump cannot go a day without thinking about Joe Biden. So anyway, by the way, he beat you, Donald. He beat you. So that Joe Biden did this thing that he got praised for. Donald Trump tried to duplicate that and have the Democrats stand up and say that their number one job was to defend American citizens and not illegal aliens, which is a false dichotomy. And kind of a racist one, and sort of just a hateful, mean, evil thing to say. It's not like trying to defend Medicaid. So he tried to have this moment, and then they didn't stand up. And all the Republicans sat there and, clapped and clapped and clapped like he was doing the greatest thing in the history of the country. It didn't work. Nobody's talking about his genius today. They're talking about the cruelty of the moment. So then the State of the Union is a constitutionally mandated address to Congress. No real precedent exists for a president using it to call Congress members crazy, accuse an entire party of electoral fraud, and make personal attacks on named members, all in one speech. The closest parallel is Andrew Johnson's Reconstruction era address. He was nearly removed from office. Like that was, the first time somebody was impeached. But it was an incredibly divisive State of the Union. Then he inverted humanitarian crisis as achievements. What actually happened? He said he lifted 2.4 million people off of food stamps, which is just a ridiculous statement. He did not lift anybody off of food stamps. What he did is he kicked people off of food stamps. The fact is that, okay, so let me just, the fact is, food pantries, since he's done this, food pantries say demand has gone up. He didn't lift people off of food stamps. He kicked people off of SNAP. Just children that go hungry. And so that's why these food pantries and things like that, they've had demand go up. There are more people more hungry today than there were because of Donald Trump. And he's sitting there talking about, oh, we need more tariffs. Yeah, tariffs, tax the poor. Don't tax the rich, tax the poor. Oh, look, the rich, they got $50,000 Dow. That's what I mean by a K-shaped economy. He's sitting there making poor people pay so that the rich people can get tax cuts. Taking away $900 million. Is it 900 million? 900 billion. Tax cut, or $900 billion cuts to Medicaid. Yeah, because poor people don't need health care either. Silver says when politicians are in charge, things are off. Who else is going to be in charge, Silver? The Easter Bunny? All right. The American people weren't buying it. He had a very, so in 50, very positive 2019, 57% of the population had a very positive reaction, 59% in 2020. And again, you have to understand, these are people that watched it. So on both sides, in 2021, it was 44%. That one's a little bit different because I think there were a lot of Republicans hate watching that one. But look at the percentage of people that, like last night, a lot of the people that watched it were actually Republicans, and even they didn't like it. But it was the least popular State of the Union of this century. Only 38% had a very favorable reaction to it. And even compared to other Donald Trump State of the Unions, it was really low. Even compared to Joe Biden's State of the Union, it was very low. Right now, 57% of the country says the union is not very strong or not strong at all. 60% say the country is worse off than a year ago, and it is, based on actual reality, based on the GDP, based on inflation, based on jobs, based on the unemployment rate. 78% believe democracy is in jeopardy, and that's coming from both sides. You have some people that think that Democrats are stealing the election because you have a president that keeps lying about that. And then you have another bunch that think that it's in jeopardy because you have a president that tried to commit a coup. So you had a speech that was an hour and 47 minutes long, longer than any State of the Union in history. And it was the least popular. But, when you have that many lies to tell, it takes that long to tell them all. So that's why he took that long. So that's my thoughts on the State of the Union. I'm sorry, Silver, that you don't agree. But yeah, I can't be positive about things this negative. Donald Trump is doing a terrible job. The State of the Union is terrible, and it's very much on Donald Trump. So there's that. I see. That's Kitty here. Are you here, Kitty? I don't. I see your window. Anyway, I think that's about it for today. That's all I have to go through. So Thanks for joining. I don't know what was going on with the comments today. For some reason, they seem to have just I tried typing a couple of comments where it would say that it was seeing my comment as spam. So I think that's a YouTube thing. I think that's why we were limited on comments. And then we had this guy, are my comments visible? So, and that was the first comment I saw from him. So I think that would explain that. Anyway, if you commented and tried to comment and failed, then I apologize. I don't know what to say about that. Seems like we only trolls were allowed to comment today. So all right, I'll talk to you tomorrow. I don't know what I'll talk about, but I'll let you know.